The stem of my champagne glass pressed into my palm while my mother tightened both hands around the microphone. Warm light glowed across the glass pavilion, but beyond the windows the January wind bent the dune grass flat against the dark lawn. A trace of dry champagne still coated my tongue. Around me, forks stopped against porcelain one by one until the room held only the soft hum of the heaters and my mother's amplified breathing. Connie Whitaker smiled at my younger sister's wedding guests as if she were about to share a harmless family joke. Then she turned toward me. "Brooke found a wonderful man who adores her," she said. "Some women know how to build a life people want to join. Others spend years blaming everyone else because no man wants them." The laughter that followed was thin and uncertain. A few guests looked down at their plates. Brooke sat beside her new husband with one hand frozen around her champagne flute. She did not stop our mother. Luke Mercer stared at Connie as though he had just discovered a crack running through the center of the family portrait he had married into. That happened nearly 6 months ago, on the night my family believed they could still decide who I was by saying it first and saying it loudly. Before I tell you how the man in the helicopter already knew my mother's lies, I hope you are doing well, and I invite you to stay with me, subscribe to the channel, and see what happened when the truth finally came back to Greyhaven. I did not stand. I did not throw my drink, reach for the microphone, or ask anyone to defend me. My phone rested beside my plate, its screen dimming over a message from the flight coordinator. 6 minutes out. Gabriel had been scheduled to arrive before the reception dinner. He had spent the afternoon at the County Emergency Operations Center reviewing a coastal evacuation system his company had helped design. His flight plan had been filed hours earlier. The private heliport beyond the pavilion had already been cleared. My mother's speech had not summoned him. Her timing had only ensured that he would arrive while everyone was still watching me. I set my glass down carefully. "You keep asking about my husband," I said. "Funny thing, you've already met him." Connie's smile sharpened. "Of course I have." Her tone told the room she was indulging a difficult child. "And where is this husband, Mara? Did he get lost on the way to the wedding?" A low vibration moved through the how you ow you. How you ow. How you ow. How you bass. How you bass. How you bass. A low vibration moved through the glass behind her. At first, it sounded like distant construction. The venue manager crossed the pavilion and closed the doors leading outside. 2 ground staff members in reflective jackets moved along the fenced perimeter of the heliport, checking that no guest had wandered past the marked boundary. The wedding band stopped playing. No one rushed onto the grass. We remained behind the glass while the helicopter descended into the pool of white landing lights beyond the dunes. The rotor wash flattened the grass and shook the bare branches near the fence. Inside, the centerpieces trembled slightly, but nothing flew across the room. Connie lowered the microphone. For the first time that evening, she had no line prepared. The helicopter settled onto the pad. The rotors slowed. A ground attendant approached only after receiving the pilot's signal, opened the passenger door, and stepped back. Gabriel Rourke climbed out in a charcoal overcoat, one hand holding the rail as he descended. He was tall, silver beginning to show at his temples, and calm in the particular way of a man who had spent years making decisions while everyone around him was panicking. He waited until the attendant cleared him, then followed the marked walkway toward the pavilion. The first whisper came from a venture attorney seated 2 tables behind me. "That's Gabriel Rourke." Another guest said the name of his company. Rourke Response Systems had been valued at more than $6 billion. Gabriel still owned more than 80% of it. Financial magazines estimated his personal fortune at roughly $5 billion, though he disliked discussing the number and I disliked even more what people assumed it meant about our marriage. Connie was not staring at a billionaire. She was staring at a face she had last seen in a hospital corridor 13 years earlier. The doors opened after the venue manager received clearance. Cold air slid across the floor as Gabriel entered. He did not scan the room for the most important person or pause for the people who had begun recognizing him. He came to my table, rested his hand lightly against the back of my chair, and looked at me. "Sorry I missed dinner, wife," he said. I almost smiled at his choice of words. Gabriel rarely performed for a room, but he understood exactly which fact had just been put on trial. Then he looked at Connie. My mother's fingers tightened around the microphone. I saw recognition move across her face before anyone mentioned his company, his net worth, or the interviews he almost never gave. The color left the skin around her mouth. For a second, the pavilion disappeared behind another image in my memory. Fluorescent hospital lights, rainwater on a gray floor, and Connie standing close to Gabriel while I was kept behind a treatment room door. At the time, I had not heard what she told him. I learned the full account years later, but I remembered the angle of her body, the way she had leaned toward him as though offering comfort, and the way Gabriel had looked at me differently after that conversation. He faced her now with no anger in his voice. "The last time we met, you gave me a story I should have verified." The room went completely still. Connie recovered fast. She always had. Her eyes moved from Gabriel to me, then across the guests who had just watched her humiliation reverse direction. "So this is what you planned," she said. "You hid a rich husband so you could arrive here and embarrass your own family?" "I arrived alone," I said. "Gabriel came from work on the flight that was arranged before your toast. You let us think you were alone. My marriage is not an asset you were entitled to inventory." Thomas Whitaker rose from the family table. My father had spent most of his life pretending silence made him neutral. That night, fear finally pushed him into motion. He did not come toward me. He stepped beside Connie and reached for the microphone because he understood that every additional word might become another fact he could not later deny. Gabriel glanced at me, asking without speaking whether I wanted him to continue. He had brought no folders into the pavilion. No attorney followed him. No investigator waited beside the helicopter. He could have explained the old report, the correction he had filed, and the questions that had begun to surface around Greyhaven. I shook my head once. This was Brooke's wedding reception. My mother had chosen to use it as a weapon. I would not turn the rest of the evening into a hearing just because I finally had the stronger evidence. Luke stood and took the microphone from Connie's hand. "That is enough," he said. His voice was controlled, but his face had gone pale. "We are continuing the reception. No more family speeches." Brooke looked at me then, not at Gabriel, not at our parents, at me. Her expression held apology, fear, and something I did not yet understand. She knew more than Luke did. She also knew less than I had begun to suspect. Thomas guided Connie away from the center of the room. She resisted for half a step, then allowed him to steer her toward the corridor beside the kitchens. He was not protecting me from another insult. He was protecting Greyhaven from whatever Gabriel's sentence might mean. The band began again, softly at first. Servers returned to the tables. Conversations restarted in broken pieces. Some guests watched Gabriel, as if wealth were the most surprising thing that had entered the room. It was not. The surprise was that my mother had once convinced him to doubt me, and he had come back willing to say so in public. Gabriel sat in the empty chair beside mine. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I am not leaving," I said. "I didn't ask you to." That was one reason I had married him. He knew the difference between standing beside me and deciding for me. My mother's toast became the story people repeated after the wedding. They talked about the helicopter, the billionaire husband, and the instant Connie's smile disappeared. Those details were dramatic enough to survive every retelling. But the helicopter did not begin my revenge, and Gabriel's money did not end my family's control. The real beginning came 8 weeks earlier, in the first week of December. I was in a parking garage outside a hospital in Virginia when an email appeared on my phone from Naomi Bell. I had not spoken to Naomi in years. She had been the dispatcher on duty during Hurricane Celeste, the night my grandmother Eleanor was found alone on the second floor of Greyhaven with an oxygen tank nearly empty. The subject line contained only a mission code. I knew it before I opened the message. Naomi wrote that she had been sorting records from an old union grievance file before moving into a smaller house. Inside the file, she had found a duplicate incident card created after the rescue. She asked whether I remembered the number and whether I had ever seen the original call history. I sat in my car without starting the engine. The concrete garage smelled of exhaust and wet wool from my coat. A fluorescent light flickered above the windshield. On my key ring, an old orange plastic tag tapped against the metal key each time my hand moved. The tag had belonged to Eleanor's accessible evacuation registration. I had found it hanging from her walker after we carried her out of Greyhaven. For 13 years, I had treated it as a reminder of the night I failed to prove what had happened. I had never considered that the number stamped into it might still connect to something outside my memory. I replied to Naomi with my private email and asked her not to send the image through an ordinary text message. I also asked where the document had been stored, who had access to it, and whether she still had the envelope from the grievance file. Those questions were not paranoia. I designed evacuation plans for hospitals and coastal facilities. I knew the difference between finding information and preserving information so another person could trust it. Naomi answered less than an hour later. The card had remained in her own union grievance file, which she had been legally permitted to retain. She photographed the front and back beside the dated file index, then offered to deliver the original to my attorney or a records custodian. 3 days after Naomi's email, Brooke called me. We had exchanged birthday messages and short holiday texts over the years, but she had not called to hear my voice in more than a decade. She sounded careful, as if every sentence had been practiced. "I'm getting married in January," she said, at Greyhaven. I looked again at Naomi's message on my laptop. "Congratulations. I want you there." My sister took a breath before adding, "Mom wants the family together. She says it is time to put the past behind us." People usually say that when they want the injured person to stop asking what happened. I did not accept immediately. I told Brooke I needed the invitation, the schedule, and the lodging information in writing. She laughed nervously and said I still treated everything like an emergency plan. She was not wrong. That night, Naomi sent the protected image of the incident card. The mission code matched the one I remembered. The date matched the night of Hurricane Celeste. The source field listed Greyhaven's main landline, the number that had sat beside the front desk since I was a child. The first entry recorded a request for assisted evacuation for an elderly woman on oxygen. The second entry appeared 57 minutes later. Assistance canceled. Caller states resident already removed. I read the 2 lines again, while Eleanor's orange tag clicked softly against my car key in my hand. At that point, I did not know whose voice was on the call. I did not know whether the recording still existed or whether the old mission file could ever be reopened. But I knew the number. It was the main line at Greyhaven. Someone inside my family had canceled the rescue. The incident card proved that someone at Greyhaven had canceled the rescue, but it did not prove who had made the call. A landline identified a building, not the person holding the receiver. If I accused my mother before I could establish that difference, she would use my certainty against me. The next morning, I spoke with Naomi by video. She placed the union grievance folder on her kitchen table and kept both hands visible while she opened it. The cardboard cover carried her name, the mission code, and the date of the internal review that followed Hurricane Celeste. Naomi had been questioned because she changed the mission status from active to canceled after the second call. Her union representative requested a copy of the incident card for her defense file. When the grievance ended without discipline, that copy was returned to her with the rest of her personal case materials. "I didn't take it from dispatch," she said. "I was entitled to the copy because they were reviewing my conduct. I believe you. I need someone else to be able to prove it." She nodded without taking offense. Naomi remembered the difference between a personal assurance and a usable record. She showed me the folder index, the envelope in which the card had been stored, and the letter closing the grievance. Then she placed the incident card into a clear sleeve and agreed to send it by tracked courier directly to my attorney. She would keep the receipt, photograph the sealed package, and sign a short statement explaining how the card had come into her possession. Only after we settled that did I ask about the calls. The first caller asked for assisted evacuation. Naomi said, "An elderly woman using oxygen, limited mobility, 2nd floor." Then someone called from the same number and said she had already been removed. "Did you recognize the voice?" "It was 13 years ago, Mara. I remember a woman. I remember she sounded irritated that I kept asking questions. I will not pretend I can identify her from memory." That answer made me trust her more. Naomi explained that ordinary dispatch audio might have been overwritten under the cooperative's retention schedule. Lena Ortiz's injury, however, had triggered a workers' compensation claim and a dispute over which organization was responsible for the mission. During that process, radio traffic and related call recordings might have been exported into an insurer's archive. "Might have been," Naomi repeated. do not build your whole case around it. I won't. I had made that mistake 13 years earlier. I had believed that because the truth was simple, proving it would also be simple. Later that afternoon, Brooke emailed the formal wedding invitation. The cream-colored digital card showed Greyhaven beneath a layer of winter sunlight. Every window polished, every cedar shingle repaired. Nothing in the photograph suggested that an elderly woman had once waited upstairs while the family car drove away. Brooke called again before dinner. I wanted to make sure you received it, she said. I did. Will you come? I'm considering it. First, tell me what Greyhaven needs from me. Silence filled the line for several seconds. I could hear a drawer close in the background. This isn't supposed to be a business conversation. Then the answer should be easy. Brooke exhaled. The resort is renewing its insurance. There is also a state coastal resilience grant. Mom included Grandma's rescue as part of the application. Why? Because Greyhaven rebuilt afterward. We changed the evacuation plan, added the heliport, installed backup power, and trained the staff. It shows what we learned. The story my mother wanted to sell was not that Greyhaven had failed Eleanor. It was that Greyhaven had transformed one unfortunate misunderstanding into a model of safety. Did the grant administrator ask for my confirmation? I asked. They said anyone named directly in the case study had to confirm it was accurate, or Greyhaven had to remove that section. That is different from requiring me to sign something. Brooke lowered her voice. Mom calls it a family statement. What does the document call itself? I don't know the exact title. Send it to me. Mara, this is my wedding. And Greyhaven is using your wedding to put me in the same building as a document your mother wants signed. You always assume the worst. No, I ask what people want before I enter a room with them. Brooke said the renewal mattered because Greyhaven's commercial loan required continuous insurance. If the insurer refused to renew, the lender could demand changes or declare a default. More than 40 employees depended on the resort. There it was, my mother's oldest method, delivered through my sister's voice. If I refused, I would not merely be protecting myself. I would be threatening jobs, families, and the property my parents had spent their lives rebuilding. I will not discuss or sign legal documents during your wedding events, I said. I will attend because you invited me as your sister. Those conditions cannot be combined. I just want one day without the past taking over. So do I. That is why I need the document before I decide. Brooke did not promise to send it. She said she would speak with our parents, then ended the call without saying goodbye. Her words pulled me back to the first review after the hurricane. I had not sat quietly while my family destroyed my record. Before the swelling in Lena's shoulder had gone down, I filed a written objection to the preliminary mission summary. I asked for every incoming call associated with Greyhaven, the complete dispatch history, and the data from Eleanor's medical alert device. The device log showed that her emergency signal came from inside the resort after my mother claimed she had already been evacuated. The packet I received contained the alert time, weather reports, flight data, and crew statements. It did not contain the source details for the canceled mission. It did not contain either call recording. Connie and Thomas submitted matching accounts. They said Eleanor had arranged to leave with a neighbor, that I had been told she was safe, and that family tension had affected my judgment. Brooke said she had been frightened and could not remember where Eleanor was when they left. Gabriel's report did not say I had invented an emergency or violated an order. He wrote that the medical alert created a legitimate rescue basis. But he also added one sentence stating that unresolved family conflict might have compromised my judgment. That sentence followed me farther than the formal finding. I was not found to have committed intentional misconduct, but the promotion board saw uncertainty where it needed confidence. My advancement stalled. Every conversation about my future began with the same polite concern about decision-making under personal stress. I appealed. I asked the cooperative to reopen the missing call issue. I was told there was no evidence that the cancellation had been malicious and no preserved audio in the packet available to the panel. Eventually, I stopped asking the same people to admit that the system they controlled had failed me. I left frontline rescue work and built a new career designing evacuation plans that did not depend on families making honest decisions in a crisis. That was not surrender. It was the decision that kept the rest of my life from being held inside one corrupted report. This time, I did not wait for Greyhaven to define the process. My attorney sent preservation notices to the Atlantic Coastal Rescue Cooperative, its former insurer, the State Grant Administrator, and Greyhaven Retreat. The notices did not accuse anyone of fraud. They identified the mission code, stated that the historical incident was disputed, and requested that records, portal logs, document versions, correspondence, and archived audio not be destroyed. I added one specific instruction. If any document appeared bearing my name, signature, professional title, or consent, the recipient had to verify it directly through my attorney before relying on it. I booked a hotel 12 miles from Greyhaven and reserved my own rental car. I would not sleep under my parents' roof, depend on one of their vehicles, or allow them to decide when I could leave. The original orange evacuation tag stayed in a secure box. Naomi's card would go to my attorney. I would bring no original evidence to the wedding. I also emailed Brooke, Connie, and Thomas together. I wrote that I would not sign documents at the rehearsal, ceremony, reception, or any private family meeting. Any proposed statement had to be sent to my attorney in advance. My attendance could not be presented as agreement with Greyhaven's account of the rescue, Thomas replied instead of Connie. He wrote that legal threats could endanger the insurance renewal and trigger scrutiny under Greyhaven's loan agreement. He reminded me that the resort was not merely a family property. It was a business supporting dozens of employees. I answered with one sentence explaining that preserving records was not a threat unless someone planned to alter or destroy them. Gabriel learned about the notices that evening. He stood at the kitchen island, with a copy sent to him because his old mission report had been named in the request. His jacket was still on, and melting snow darkened the shoulders. He read the last page before setting it down. "You reopened the Celeste record," he said. "I asked them to preserve it. You made a decision involving my report without telling me. I knew they would notify you. That is not the same as hearing it from my wife. I washed my hands at the sink even though they were already clean. It gave me something precise to do. Your involvement makes this harder," I said. "The moment people see your name, they will say I used your company and your money to intimidate Greyhaven. Then we document that I did neither. You don't know my family. I know what it is like to learn about your plans from an attorney." His voice stayed even. Gabriel did not raise it to gain control, which made it harder for me to dismiss what he was saying. "I needed to know the records were safe before anyone could interfere," I said. "And telling me would have made them less safe? I had no evidence for that. What I had was an old reflex. The safest plan was always the one no one else could weaken, question, or take from me." Gabriel rested both hands on the counter. "You are right to protect the record. You are right not to let my position become the story. But you are using independence to avoid deciding whether you trust me. I married you. That answered whether you loved me. It did not answer whether you will let me stand beside you when the outcome is uncertain." The words hurt because they were accurate. I told him I was still going to Greyhaven. He said he had never asked me not to go. He would not contact the grant office, insurer, lender, or my family, unless required as a witness. He would not arrive with lawyers or turn my case into a display of influence. Then he asked for one thing in return: no more surprises involving his old report. I agreed. The document from Greyhaven arrived the following afternoon. Its title was Incident Attestation and Limited Name Use Authorization. It was not a state form. It was not an insurance requirement. Greyhaven's own consultant had drafted it. The language asked me to confirm that Eleanor had voluntarily remained behind, that the rescue resulted from a misunderstanding during chaotic conditions, and that no intentional misrepresentation had occurred. It also gave Greyhaven permission to use my name, my former title as a rescue pilot, and photographs of me in its grant materials. The final paragraph stated that I did not object to Greyhaven presenting the incident as evidence of institutional resilience. I saved the original file, the email header, and the complete version history before opening a working copy. Then, I sent my written refusal through my attorney. I would not confirm facts I knew were false. I would not authorize the use of my identity. Greyhaven could remove the case study and submit the rest of its application honestly. An internal comment remained visible in the document history. Need Mara before Monday deadline. That alone proved urgency, not deception. Then I examined the earlier versions. The file had been created 11 days before Brooke called to invite me. Thomas had added the sentence claiming that I had agreed in principle 4 days before my sister asked whether I would come home. The wedding invitation had never been their first step toward reconciliation. It had been their plan for obtaining a signature they had already told others I was willing to give. I returned to Greyhaven on the afternoon before Brooke's wedding. The resort looked cleaner than any place containing 13 years of lies had a right to look. Fresh cedar shingles covered the main building. White railings framed the porches. Beyond the dunes, the Atlantic rolled beneath a colorless winter sky, and the wind carried salt across the parking lot in thin, cold sheets. I left my suitcase at the hotel 12 miles away and drove to the rehearsal in my rental car. I had no intention of depending on my parents for a room, a ride, or permission to leave. A brass plaque beside the entrance recognized Connie Whitaker for her leadership in community disaster preparedness. Beneath her name were the words resilience, responsibility, and service. I read them twice. The orange evacuation tag on my keyring tapped against the car key as I locked the door. That small sound carried me back to September of 2012, before Greyhaven had a heliport, backup generators, public safety awards, or carefully edited stories about what had happened during Hurricane Celeste. I was 26 then, flying for the Atlantic Coastal Rescue Cooperative. Celeste had weakened slightly overnight, but its outer bands were already pushing rain across the barrier islands. The main road near Greyhaven was expected to close before noon, and the final voluntary evacuation order had become mandatory. I was on duty at the cooperative's temporary base when I called my mother. "Where is Grandma?" I asked. Connie sounded distracted. Doors slammed behind her. Thomas was shouting about fuel. Brooke, who was 19, asked whether someone had packed her garment bag. "Eleanor left with the Bells," Connie said. "They had room in their van. Did you see her get in?" "Mara, I am trying to evacuate an entire property." "That was not my question. She is safe. Focus on your job and let me handle my own mother." At the time, that was all I knew. Years later, Brooke admitted that she had seen Eleanor standing at an upstairs window while the family vehicle pulled away. Thomas later acknowledged that he had loaded financial files and insurance records into the rear cargo area. I did not witness either act. I learned about them through testimony and documents after the wedding. On the morning of the storm, I believed my mother's answer. Greyhaven's accessible evacuation registry listed Eleanor as needing physical assistance. She used supplemental oxygen and could not descend a full staircase without help, but families sometimes arranged private transportation before public teams arrived. If the Bells had taken her, there was no rescue mission to perform. What I did not know was that 2 calls had already been placed from Greyhaven's front desk. I did not hear either call that day. I heard them 13 years later, after the archived audio was found in the insurer's claim file. In the first call, Connie requested assistance for an elderly woman on oxygen who remained on the 2nd floor. Naomi Bell took the information, opened the mission, and told her a team would be assigned as conditions allowed. 57 minutes later, Connie called again. "The resident has already been removed," she said. Naomi asked who had taken her. "A neighbor." "Which neighbor?" "I don't have time for this. She is gone. Do not send anyone here." Naomi warned that the request had been marked urgent because oxygen was involved. Connie replied, "The family does not want more vehicles coming onto the property and creating a scene." The mission was canceled based on information supplied by the caller. Later, my mother claimed she had only repeated what Thomas told her. Thomas claimed he believed Eleanor had gone with the Bells. Neither explanation changed the timing. They left Greyhaven knowing Eleanor was still inside, then told dispatch she was gone. Less than an hour after I spoke to Connie, an alert entered the cooperative system from Eleanor's medical device. The signal identified her unit, her location, and a low oxygen emergency. It was still transmitting from the 2nd floor of Greyhaven. I checked the coordinates twice. Gabriel sat in the second pilot's seat beside me, reviewing the same data. He was 31 then, qualified as second in command, and serving as the onboard mission lead. Lena Ortiz, our flight medic, stood behind us while the rescue technician secured his equipment. "Dispatch canceled an earlier request from that address," Gabriel said. "The medical alert is newer," I replied. The patient is still there. Lena leaned between the seats and studied the weather display. That next band is moving faster than forecast. We did not launch because Eleanor was my grandmother. We followed the same process we would have used for anyone else. I was pilot in command, which meant the final decision about the aircraft belonged to me. Gabriel confirmed the mission had a verified life safety basis. We checked the current wind, projected gusts, fuel, visibility, alternate landing sites, crew readiness, and the time required to reach Greyhaven and leave the island corridor. Conditions remained within our operating limits, but only narrowly. The better weather window had already begun closing. If we go, we commit to the alternate field on return, Gabriel said. I agree. Lena tightened the strap on her medical bag. I want the cabin secured for a rough approach. No one argued. No one was ordered into the aircraft against their judgment. We understood the risk and agreed that leaving a confirmed oxygen-dependent patient inside Greyhaven posed the greater danger. We lifted off under a low ceiling, the coast reduced to gray water, pale sand, and scattered rooftops beneath us. Rain struck the windshield in short bursts. I kept my attention on the instruments, the wind calls, and Gabriel's navigation. There was no room in the cockpit for family history. The access road near Greyhaven had flooded by the time we arrived. The resort's current heliport did not exist then. We used an old maintenance field east of the main building, one of the emergency landing areas listed in the county map. The ground was wet, but firm enough for a controlled landing. I kept the aircraft running, while Gabriel, Lena, and the rescue technician crossed toward the rear entrance. The wind rocked the fuselage in small, uneven movements. I watched the gauges, listened to their radio traffic, and counted the minutes. Entering the main stairwell, Gabriel reported. A short time later, Lena's voice came through. Patient located. Conscious, confused, oxygen nearly depleted. I closed my eyes for less than a second, then opened them and returned my attention to the instruments. They found Eleanor beside the upstairs window, with her walker angled toward the door. Her portable oxygen tank was almost empty. The orange evacuation tag still hung from the walker's frame. When Lena asked why she had not left with the family, Eleanor said, "Connie told me the aircrew would come after they got Brooke across." That sentence remained in my memory for years, but memory alone could not carry a formal case. Lena had been assessing Eleanor's oxygen level, Gabriel had been coordinating the extraction, and no one entered the remark fully into the initial report. Much later, a certified social work note from Eleanor's rehabilitation file supported the same account. At the time, all that mattered was getting her out. Gabriel and the technician carried Eleanor down in an evacuation chair. Lena followed with the oxygen equipment. Rain swept across the maintenance field while they approached the aircraft. I watched Gabriel secure Eleanor's chair and Lena connect a fresh oxygen supply. The rescue technician checked the cabin equipment, then gave me the signal. We departed for the alternate field inland. The forecast had placed the strongest gusts behind us. They arrived sooner than expected. The aircraft lurched as we crossed the edge of the next band. I corrected, reduced our exposure, and told Gabriel to prepare the cabin for a hard landing. He repeated the instruction to the crew. There was no panic, only movement, confirmation, and the flat discipline of people who understood that fear did not alter procedure. The alternate field appeared through the rain. I brought us down harder than I wanted, but inside the survivable envelope. The landing gear absorbed the first impact. The aircraft shifted, struck again, then settled at an angle. A secured medical unit moved inside its bracket after the second impact. It struck Lena across the shoulder and upper back. The investigation later examined the weather, the bracket, the force of the landing, equipment securement, and the delay that had placed us in the stronger band. No honest report could say my mother alone caused Lena's injury, but the timeline eventually showed that the unnecessary cancellation cost us nearly an hour of safer operating conditions. Eleanor survived. Lena's injury ended her career in the air. At the hospital, I remained separated from my family while the cooperative began its preliminary review. I had changed into dry clothes, but rainwater still gathered beneath the chairs from boots and equipment moving through the corridor. Connie arrived wrapped in a wool coat, looking less like a woman whose mother had almost died than a property owner preparing for an insurance interview. "You had no right to put everyone at risk," she told me. The alert came from Grandma's device. She was being handled. By whom? Connie looked past me. This is not the place. It became the place when you left her upstairs. Thomas stepped between us and said the Bells had misunderstood the arrangement. Brooke sat against the wall with both hands locked together, staring at the floor. I wanted her to look at me and say what she had seen. She did not. A nurse called me into another room before I could press further. When I returned, Connie was standing beside Gabriel near the far end of the corridor. Her voice was too low for me to hear. She touched his sleeve once, as if they were sharing the burden of my behavior. Gabriel's expression changed while she spoke. I did not know what she had told him until years later, when he admitted it himself. Connie said I had known Eleanor was already safe. She claimed I had used the medical alert as an excuse to return because I resented the family for evacuating without consulting me. She described me as competitive, angry, and determined to prove that I was more competent than everyone else. Then she gave him the sentence that found its way into his report. Family conflict may have compromised the pilot's judgment. The sentence did not accuse me of inventing the alert. It did something more effective. It made every correct decision I had made look emotionally contaminated. The orange tag touched my key again, pulling me out of the memory. I was standing inside the renovated Greyhaven lobby. Brooke's wedding coordinator hurried past carrying place cards. Staff members arranged white flowers along the hallway. Somewhere behind the ballroom doors, Connie laughed with guests, as if the building had never contained anything more dangerous than bad weather. Brooke approached in a cream rehearsal dress. "You came." I said I would. Her eyes dropped briefly to the orange tag in my hand. She recognized it. Her face tightened, but she did not ask why I still carried it. "The rehearsal starts in 20 minutes, she said. "Mom wants to see you in the management office first." I told all three of you that I would not discuss documents during wedding events. She says it will only take a minute. That is usually how people describe a boundary they plan to ignore. Brooke rubbed her thumb along the edge of her engagement ring. "Please do not make this harder than it has to be." I followed her down the hall, because refusing to enter the office would not make the pressure disappear. It would only let Connie tell everyone I had arrived looking for conflict. The management wing smelled of polished wood and lemon cleaner. My father's name remained on one office door. Connie's name appeared on another beside the title, Managing Member. Brooke stopped outside the conference room. "I need to check on the florist," she said. "You brought me here and now you are leaving?" "Mom will explain." Before I could answer, Brooke walked away. The conference room door stood open. No one was inside. On the center of the table sat a white document box tied with a silver ribbon, arranged like a wedding gift. I did not touch it. Through the clear lid, I could see a printed copy of the incident attestation, a black fountain pen, and a yellow note written in my mother's familiar hand. Signed before the rehearsal dinner. I left the document box exactly where it was. The silver ribbon caught the conference room light, making the package look more ceremonial than coercive. My mother had always understood presentation. A demand placed inside a gift box could be described later as an offering. A threat delivered beside wedding flowers could be remembered as concern. Connie entered through the door behind me, carrying 2 coffee cups. "I thought we could begin again," she said. She placed 1 cup beside the box. I did not reach for either. "Brooke said the rehearsal starts soon." "It does. This will only take a moment if you do not make it difficult." "You left a false statement with a pen and a deadline." Her expression stayed composed. "I left a clarification that protects this family and the people who work here." Eleanor did not voluntarily remain behind. She refused to leave until she found several things she believed were missing. You know how stubborn she could be. She was upstairs with almost no oxygen. "And she survived because you went back." Connie said it as if that should have satisfied me. In her version, survival erased abandonment. A rescue transformed the choices that made it necessary. I looked through the clear lid at the signature line. Why not remove the Celeste case study from the grant application? Because it is the strongest evidence of what Greyhaven became after the storm. What Greyhaven became is not proof of what Greyhaven was. She set her coffee down harder than she intended. We installed backup power. We built an accessible evacuation route. We added the heliport. Every employee completes emergency training twice a year. None of that would have happened without Eleanor's rescue. You mean without Eleanor being left behind? I mean without a tragedy forcing change. That is not what the statement says. Connie moved to the window overlooking the service courtyard. Staff members were carrying folded chairs into the pavilion. One of them waved toward her. She returned the gesture with a warm smile before turning back to me. 43 people receive paychecks from Greyhaven, she said. Some have children, some have medical expenses. Several stayed with us when we could barely make payroll after the storm. The grant would fund the new shoreline barrier and accessible shelter wing. If the application weakens, the insurer asks harder questions. If the insurer refuses renewal, the lender can intervene. Then submit an honest application. An honest application will make it sound as though we deliberately abandoned Eleanor. You did. Her face changed. Not much. A tightening around the eyes. A pause before the next breath. Connie had spent years training herself never to react before deciding what reaction would serve her. You were not here, she said. I was the one who brought her out. You flew in after the decisions had already been made. You did not see the flooding. You did not hear the evacuation warnings changing every 10 minutes. You did not have dozens of guests and employees demanding answers. I called you. You told me she was gone. I told you what I believed at the time. Then why does your statement say she chose to remain? Because that is how Eleanor described it later. Send me the source. She was your grandmother, not a legal exhibit. You are the one using her in a grant application. Connie looked toward the box. Sign the statement, Mara. We will remove the photograph authorization if that is what offends you. Then we can attend Brooke's wedding like a normal family. I already refused in writing. You refused language before we had the chance to explain it. No explanation changes the facts. The door opened, and Thomas entered with a folder under his arm. He closed the door and took the chair at the head of the table as if the meeting had been scheduled with my consent. Your attorney's notice has already caused unnecessary concern, he said. Preserving records should not concern anyone who intends to submit accurate information. We are not discussing criminal evidence. We are discussing a commercial renewal. He opened the folder and turned several pages toward me. The first showed the ownership structure of Greyhaven Retreat LLC. Connie and Thomas held the controlling membership interests. Brooke held a smaller, non-voting interest created after the rebuilding. The second document summarized Greyhaven's secured commercial loan. Thomas tapped a paragraph marked Insurance Covenant. The LLC must maintain continuous coverage acceptable to the lender, he said. If the carrier refuses renewal, the lender can require corrective management, demand additional collateral, or declare a default. That does not mean I have to sign false information. It means your refusal can have consequences beyond your feelings. My feelings are not the issue. You have spent 13 years treating one confused night as though it defines us. You submitted the same story to an insurer after you had time to think. His finger stopped on the page. I had not yet told him that my attorney knew about the older insurance file. His reaction lasted less than a second, but it was enough. Thomas closed the folder. Greyhaven was nearly destroyed. We did what was necessary to keep the business alive. You signed a passenger record stating Eleanor left with the Bells. That was the information available to me. Their van had already left. His eyes moved to Connie. She spoke before he could. No one had perfect information in a hurricane. Then your current statement should say the facts remain disputed. Instead, it asks me to confirm facts you cannot prove. Thomas pushed the box toward me. This is not an admission of wrongdoing or a waiver of claims. It is a limited clarification. It authorizes the use of my name, former title, and image. It says Eleanor voluntarily remained. It says no one intentionally misrepresented her location. Those are not neutral clarifications. We can revise individual words. You cannot revise a lie until it becomes true. Connie folded her arms. You sound pleased that Greyhaven might lose its insurance. I am pleased that you cannot force me to certify your version. If the lender replaces management, employees will panic. Vendors will tighten their terms. Bookings will cancel. Are you prepared to explain that to every person downstairs? The covenant becomes dangerous because you are risking the renewal with inaccurate submissions. My signature would not solve that. It would move part of the liability onto me. Thomas's expression hardened. He had expected the words loan covenant and payroll to frighten me into compliance. Instead, The documents confirmed that their pressure came from choices they were still making. "I will attend the rehearsal," I said. "I will not sign." Connie's voice dropped. "Then do not pretend you came here for Brooke." "I came because she invited me." "You came with lawyers and preservation notices." "I came with a hotel room, my own car, and a written boundary. You brought the contract." I walked out before either of them could turn the argument into another circle. The rehearsal had already begun in the glass pavilion. Brooke stood beneath an arch of white branches, while the coordinator explained the order of entry. Luke waited beside her, watching the doors instead of the coordinator. When he saw me, some of the tension left his face. Brooke did not look relieved. I took my assigned place at the far end of the family row. Connie entered several minutes later smiling, her hand resting lightly on Thomas's arm. No one looking at them would have guessed they had just tried to place a false statement under my hand. The coordinator walked us through the ceremony twice. Connie corrected the timing of the music, the angle of Brooke's entrance, and the position of the photographers. She did not speak to me again until the others moved toward the rehearsal dinner. Brooke caught my arm near the cloakroom. "Can we talk alone?" I followed her onto a covered side porch. The wind came off the sound instead of the ocean there, carrying the smell of wet wood and marsh grass. Brooke pulled her wrap tighter around her shoulders. "Mom said you refused." "I refused before I came. She thought that once you understood the loan situation, I understand it. The shoreline work is not cosmetic. Another major storm could take part of the eastern lawn. The grant pays for the barrier and the accessible shelter. Then, Greyhaven should apply without using Eleanor's rescue. The application will score lower. That is not a reason to make me endorse a false account." Brooke stared through the railing toward the dark water. "The wedding is already paid for. Vendors have been booked for months. Guests flew in. If something happens with the insurer now, it could damage everything. Your wedding is not dependent on my signature. You know what I mean. I know you are combining 3 separate things, so I feel responsible for all of them." She turned toward me. "Why can't you let us say it was a misunderstanding? Grandma survived. Greyhaven changed. You built another career. What does reopening this actually give you? A correct record. You already know what happened. Knowing is not the same as allowing them to keep using my name to support the opposite." Brooke's eyes filled, but she did not cry. "I wanted you here." "Did you?" "Yes." "Did you know the statement existed before you invited me?" Her gaze moved past my shoulder. "Brooke, Mom said the consultant was preparing something." "That is not what I asked. She said it would help everyone move forward." "Did you know they had already written that I agreed in principle?" "No." The answer came quickly enough that I believed she had not known that exact sentence. It did not answer how much she had known. "Did you know the document was created before your call?" She rubbed her thumb across her ring. "I knew they needed your confirmation. And you called without telling me. I was afraid you would say no before hearing us out." "I did hear you out. The answer is still no." Her face tightened. "Can you at least promise not to bring this into the ceremony?" "I already promised that." "No confrontations, no public accusations, no Gabriel arriving with attorneys. Gabriel is attending the reception after work. He is not bringing attorneys." Brooke looked startled. "He is coming?" "You knew I was married. I knew you had someone. You never told me anything. You stopped asking about my life years ago. That is not fair. Neither is inviting me home because you need my signature and then pretending the invitation had no conditions." A door opened behind us. Luke stepped onto the porch carrying Brooke's coat. "The dinner is starting," he said. Brooke took the coat without meeting his eyes. Luke looked between us. "What signature?" "It is business," Brooke said. It sounded like it involved Mara. "Mara does not want to discuss it." "I am willing to discuss it," I said. "I am not willing to sign it." Brooke's head lifted sharply. "Please." Luke waited, but she offered nothing else. He did not press her on the porch. He simply held the door while we went inside. At dinner, Connie placed me between an elderly cousin who barely remembered me and a real estate broker who spent 20 minutes explaining the value of coastal property. Brooke and Luke sat near the center of the table. Thomas moved between guests, speaking quietly to employees and vendors. The seating arrangement kept me far from my sister and created the image Connie wanted. Mara had attended, Mara was smiling politely, and the Whitaker family had gathered without conflict. I understood the usefulness of that image before I found the email proving it. After dinner, I returned to my hotel and opened the folder my attorney had created for the Greyhaven documents. I saved the original attachment from Connie's email without altering it. I exported the complete headers and copied the version history into a separate record. Then I created a hash of the file and sent it to counsel. The hash did not prove Connie wrote the document. It did not prove Thomas had personally added every line attributed to his account. It served one limited purpose, demonstrating that the file I received had not changed after I preserved it. My mother would have mocked that distinction. It was exactly why I made it. At 10:17 that night, another email arrived from Thomas. The subject line read, "Revised language for final review." He had attached a new version of the statement and copied Brooke, Connie, the grant consultant, and me. He had also accidentally included the earlier email chain beneath it. I read from the oldest message upward. The consultant had warned Connie that without my direct confirmation, Greyhaven should remove my name and avoid describing the rescue as an uncontested success story. Connie replied that I would be present at the wedding and that photographs could provide supporting context showing family reconciliation. Thomas asked whether photographs would satisfy the grant administrator. The consultant answered that photographs could not replace consent or factual confirmation. Connie wrote back that they would help establish credibility if I later claimed the family remained estranged. A later message suggested placing me near Brooke during the ceremony and ensuring at least one official photograph showed us smiling together. My attendance had never been enough. My face was another document they intended to submit. I forwarded the full thread to my attorney and saved the email headers. Then I sent Brooke a copy with one question. Did you know they plan to use wedding photographs this way? She did not answer that night. The next morning, Greyhaven hosted a family breakfast in a private dining room overlooking the dunes. I arrived 10 minutes late by choice. I wanted the room settled before I entered. Connie was speaking to Luke near the buffet. Thomas stood beside Brooke at the far window. I heard him before he noticed me. She cannot leave the property again until this is resolved, he said quietly. You need to keep her here after the ceremony. Tell her you want photographs. Tell her you need help with your dress, whatever works. Luke turned away from Connie. Keep who here? Thomas saw me and stopped. Brooke's face drained of color. Luke looked at the four of us. Is he talking about Mara? No one is keeping me anywhere, I said. Thomas recovered first. It was a poor choice of words. We need time to reach an understanding before the filing deadline. Luke faced Brooke. What filing deadline? She opened her mouth, but Connie stepped forward. This is a private family matter connected to the resort. You are using our wedding photographs for a business filing, Luke said. That makes it part of my wedding. Connie's smile did not return. No photograph has been submitted. Because Mara found the email first? Brooke looked at me. She knew I had sent it. She also knew silence could no longer protect her from the question. Luke moved closer to her, not angrily, but with the care of a man realizing he might not know the person he was about to marry. Did you know all of this before you invited her? Brooke gripped the back of a dining chair. Her eyes moved from Luke to Connie, then to me. She did not say no. Brooke finally answered Luke, but she kept her eyes on the back of the chair instead of looking at him. I knew Mom wanted Mara's confirmation, she said. I knew she thought the wedding might make it easier for us to talk. I did not know they planned to use photographs as proof. Luke's jaw tightened. Did you know the statement had already been written? Yes. The word was barely louder than the heating vent, but everyone heard it. Connie moved beside her. Brooke was trying to repair a family relationship before beginning her marriage. Do not punish her for wanting peace. Luke looked at the email thread on his phone. Peace does not require a grant consultant. Thomas lowered his voice. This discussion can wait until after the wedding. That is what everyone keeps saying, Luke replied. Wait until after the rehearsal. Wait until after the ceremony. Wait until after the deadline. Meanwhile, you are asking Mara to sign something she says is false. Brooke looked at me then. I wanted you here for more than the document. I believe part of you did. The answer hurt her, but I was done offering complete trust in exchange for partial truth. Connie told the others that breakfast was getting cold. Staff members remained near the buffet, pretending not to listen. I had no interest in forcing them to witness more of a family confrontation that could affect their jobs. I am leaving for the morning, I said. I will return for the scheduled wedding events. I will not discuss the statement again. Thomas stepped toward me. You cannot keep walking away every time a conversation becomes uncomfortable. I walked into your conference room. I read your document. I answered you. Refusing to repeat the same conversation is not walking away. I left through the main entrance and drove toward my attorney's temporary office in Manteo. The wind pushed sand across the road in pale ribbons. Greyhaven disappeared behind the dunes, but the pressure of that dining room stayed with me. Naomi was already waiting when I arrived. She had driven from her home with the original union grievance folder sealed inside a document case. My attorney, Allison Price, met us in a conference room with a camera positioned above the table. We recorded the opening so there would be a clear account of what Naomi delivered and how it had been stored. Naomi identified the folder, the grievance number, and the closing letter from the cooperative. The letter confirmed that she had been reviewed for changing the mission status after the second caller said Eleanor had already left Greyhaven. The cooperative questioned whether I should have required independent confirmation, Naomi said. My union argued that dispatchers routinely relied on callers unless there was a reason to believe the information was false. Did you have such a reason? Allison asked. Not then. The second caller knew the resident's name, condition, and location. The call came from the same registered line. Naomi removed the incident card from the envelope without touching the writing surface. The copy showed both entries and the handwritten note her supervisor had added during the internal review. Caller insisted no response required. Stated resident already transported. A cover letter from Naomi's union representative listed the card as an attachment returned to her after the grievance ended. That letter mattered almost as much as the card. It explained why Naomi possessed the document and kept the discovery from looking like a retired dispatcher had taken confidential records home for 13 years. I never had the audio, Naomi said. I heard both calls while I was working, but any export would have been handled by records. Who would have requested an export? I asked. The injury investigator, the insurer, or counsel handling the subrogation dispute. Lena's claim changed the retention process. Naomi wrote down the names of 2 former records, custodians, and the company that had maintained the cooperative's archive at the time. She did not promise the audio still existed. She only gave Allison a legitimate path to search for it. Before Naomi left, I asked one question I had avoided during our video call. Did you ever speak to Connie after the rescue? Once. She called to complain that dispatch had endangered the family by sending the aircraft after she canceled. What did she say about Eleanor? She said Eleanor had changed her mind after the family left and triggered the alert because she wanted attention. The explanation was cruel enough to sound like my mother, but memory after 13 years was not proof. Allison noted it as a possible line of inquiry, not a fact we would rely on. Our next piece came from a county reimbursement file. After Hurricane Celeste, residents who used private vehicles to transport elderly or disabled neighbors could apply for fuel and emergency supply reimbursement. Walter and June Bell, the neighbors my parents claimed had taken Eleanor, submitted such a request for their van. Naomi Bell was no relation to them. The shared surname had caused confusion in the early paperwork, but the county file identified Walter and June by address and vehicle registration. Their certified passenger list included Walter, June, their adult son, 2 guests from a nearby rental house, and an elderly neighbor from the south end of the island. Eleanor Whitaker was not listed. The departure time on the reimbursement log placed the Bell van beyond the first checkpoint 22 minutes before Connie called dispatch to cancel assistance. June Bell joined us by video that afternoon. Her white hair was cut close to her head, and she spoke without hesitation. Connie asked whether we had room early that morning, June said. We told her we had 1 seat left, but the person had to be ready when we passed Greyhaven. Did anyone bring Eleanor downstairs? Allison asked. No. We waited near the service entrance for about 7 minutes. Thomas came out and said they had made another arrangement. Did Connie or Thomas later tell you they had reported Eleanor as your passenger? June's mouth tightened. Not until the insurance investigator called. I told him she was never in my van. The passenger list did not prove who had canceled the rescue. It did destroy the explanation my parents had repeated for years. Eleanor had not left with the Bells. The Bells had already gone when Connie said she had. I could have spent the rest of the afternoon studying those records, arranging every timestamp until the past looked neat enough to control. Instead, I drove to meet Lena Ortiz. She lived in a small house west of the Sound, 40 minutes from Greyhaven. A wooden ramp led to the front porch, though she walked without assistance when she opened the door. Her left shoulder sat slightly lower than her right. She moved carefully rather than weakly, turning her whole body when she needed to look behind her. Lena had been 34 during the rescue. At 47, she still managed chronic nerve pain, reduced rotation in her shoulder, and damage in her lower spine. She worked part-time training emergency medical crews, but she had never returned to flight duty. She did not invite me to hug her. "What do you need me to sign?" she asked. "Nothing today. That usually means something next week." She led me into the kitchen and remained standing while I sat at the table. I had brought a copy of the incident card, the Bell passenger list, and a preliminary timeline. I placed the folder between us. "We found evidence that the rescue was canceled based on false information," I said. "The delay may have increased our exposure to the next weather band." Lena did not look at the folder. "You came here to fix your record." "Yes. At least you said it. I also want the mission record to reflect what happened to you. What happened to me is not a paragraph under your name, Mara. I know that." "No, you know how to say it. There is a difference." She turned toward the counter and used both hands to lift the kettle, keeping her left elbow close to her body. "I have lived inside the consequences of that report for 13 years, she said. "Every morning when my fingers are numb, every time I need help getting something down from a shelf, every time someone says I was lucky because I can still walk." I had rehearsed explanations on the drive there. None of them deserved to be spoken. "I treated you like part of the missing evidence," I said. "I should have come sooner and asked what you needed from me, not what you remembered." "You did not come at all." "No." "Why?" "Because I thought you blamed me." "I did blame you." The answer landed cleanly. Lena sat across from me. "I believed you pushed the mission because Eleanor was your grandmother. I believed Gabriel let you do it because he trusted you. Then I spent years wondering whether my body was the cost of a family argument. I did not know she was there until the device triggered. I know what the packet said. The packet did not include the canceled call. That does not change the fact that we flew into worsening conditions." "No, it does not." She studied me for several seconds. "Most people who come asking for forgiveness begin by explaining why they do not need it. I'm not asking you to forgive me." "What are you asking?" "For the chance to show you the complete timeline when we have it. Then you decide whether you want any part of correcting the record." Lena finally opened the folder. We spent the next hour reviewing the Bell departure log, the incident card, and the medical alert timestamp. She did not soften because the evidence supported me. She asked practical questions about source records, clock synchronization, and whether the device timestamp had been converted correctly. Those were the questions of the medic I remembered. The following morning, Lena agreed to join a video conference with Allison and Elaine Porter, an independent aviation safety consultant who had spent 25 years reviewing rotorcraft incidents. Elaine did not tell us what we wanted to hear. She compared the cooperative's weather archive, airport observations, radar reconstruction, flight data, and the time the mission was first opened. The storm band that affected our return had accelerated and shifted. Even if we had launched after the first request, turbulence and rain would still have been possible. "No responsible analyst can say the hard landing would not have occurred," Elaine said. "Weather does not provide that level of certainty." Lena leaned toward the screen. "Can you say the delay increased the exposure?" "Yes." Based on the available data, the later launch placed the aircraft closer to the period of stronger gusts and reduced the margin for the return leg. The cancellation was a contributing factor in the risk environment, not a single proven cause of the injury. That distinction mattered. My mother had not reached through time and moved the medical unit that struck Lena. Equipment securement, aircraft movement, weather variation, and operational decisions all belonged in the analysis. But the false cancellation had taken away nearly an hour of safer conditions. It had not merely changed a line in a file. It had changed the environment in which we flew. Lena agreed to provide a statement only if Elaine's cautious conclusion remained intact. "I will not trade one simplified story for another," she said. "Neither will I," replied. After the consultant ended the call, Lena stayed on the screen. "There is something else," she said. "Connie came to see me after I was discharged. I had known my mother spoke to Gabriel at the hospital. I did not know she had approached Lena later. She brought flowers," Lena continued. "She said you had always needed to prove you were the most capable person in the room. She said you ignored the family because rescuing Eleanor gave you a chance to be right." "What did you say?" "I told her not to come back. Did you believe her?" "Enough of it." Lena's honesty cut deeper than a gentler answer would have. "She knew I was angry," Lena said. "She gave that anger a direction. She told me you had used the crew to settle something with her. I remembered every letter I had sent during my appeal, every request for records, every hour spent, proving my own decision had been justified. I had never gone to Lena and asked how she understood the mission. I had assumed that because she blamed me, avoiding her was a form of respect. It was also cowardice. "I let Connie keep you isolated from me," I said. "You helped her by staying away." "Yes." Lena rubbed the base of her left thumb, where the nerves still troubled her. "Do not mistake this for us repairing everything. I won't. I will help correct the mission record because I want the contributing factors documented accurately. Not because Gabriel is rich. Not because your mother insulted you. Not because I need to become part of your family's story. That is exactly how it should be." Lena signed a limited authorization allowing Allison to obtain the portions of her workers' compensation and subrogation files related to the mission. The authorization did not open her entire medical history. It named the incident, the mission code, the requested records, and the parties permitted to receive them. Allison sent it to the insurer's archive custodian that afternoon. We expected days of silence. Instead, the custodian called within 3 hours. The mission packet had been preserved under legal hold because the workers' compensation claim had overlapped with a dispute between the cooperative, its insurer, the equipment vendor, and Greyhaven's insurer. The archive contained the flight data, radio export, dispatch materials, equipment reports, witness correspondence, and submissions from Greyhaven. The custodian verified that the mission code on Naomi's card matched the archived packet. He would not release anything until the authorization, preservation notice, and chain of custody forms had been reviewed. Allison agreed. No one opened or downloaded the files while we were on the call. Before ending, the custodian read the archive index, so Allison could confirm the categories were responsive. Most of the file names were routine: weather export, crew report, medical unit inspection, flight, data summary. Then he reached 2 entries that made me stop writing. One was labeled Thomas Whitaker Submission. The other was labeled Dispatch Audio Export. The recording my family had spent 13 years pretending did not matter had been preserved in the same archive as the document my father had sent to protect Greyhaven. The sentence Gabriel had written 13 years earlier was only 10 words long. "Family conflict may have compromised the pilot's judgment." I read it again on the morning of Brooke's wedding while Gabriel stood across from me in my hotel room. He had arrived at Dare County Regional Airport shortly after sunrise and stopped to see me before reporting to the County Emergency Operations Center. His company was participating in a coastal evacuation drill that afternoon. The helicopter scheduled to carry him to Greyhaven's reception had been booked days earlier, along with its flight plan and landing authorization. Nothing about his arrival had been arranged to surprise my family. Gabriel removed his overcoat and laid it across the back of a chair. Outside my window, winter rain darkened the hotel parking lot. He looked tired, but he did not ask to postpone the conversation. I had printed the original report, his corrected memorandum from 2017, and the certified index from the insurer's claim archive. The documents lay in separate folders on the desk. He picked up the original report and found the sentence without searching. "I should not have written this," he said. "You believed it. I believed it was possible. You put it in an official report." "Yes." He did not tell me he had been young, exhausted, or shaken by Lena's injury. All 3 things were true. None of them changed what his words had done. Gabriel sat beside the desk. "Your mother approached me after Eleanor was stable. She said you had known the family arranged transportation. She described the medical alert as something you used to justify going back. Did you ask her how she knew Grandma had left?" "No." "Did you verify who supposedly took her?" "No." "Did you ask dispatch why the first mission had been canceled?" No. Each answer came without qualification. He turned the report toward himself. I had a legitimate alert, a crew statement supporting the launch, and flight data showing you stayed within procedure. Then I allowed a private conversation with your mother to become an interpretation of your judgment. You made her accusations sound professional. I did. That was the difference between Gabriel's apology and my parents' explanations. He did not call the sentence unfortunate wording or a misunderstanding created by chaos. He named the decision he had made. Why did you listen to her? I asked. Because Lena had just been told her injury might end her flight career. I was looking for a decision that could explain why we were there. Connie offered one before the complete timeline existed. And if. So you gave the uncertainty my name. Yes. The answer hurt even after all those years. During the first review, Gabriel's sentence had not been the only reason my advancement stopped. The missing dispatch material, my parents' matching accounts, and Brooke's refusal to remember had all contributed. But Gabriel had carried professional credibility my family did not possess. When he suggested my judgment might have been affected by personal conflict, the people reviewing me no longer needed to call me reckless. They only needed to say they had concerns. You knew the alert was real, I said. Yes. You knew the mission had been approved. Yes. And you still made me the unstable variable? Gabriel folded the report along its existing crease. I cannot defend that. I had once imagined hearing him say those words would give me relief. Instead, they left room for the full weight of what had happened. An honest apology did not make the consequence smaller. It only stopped adding another lie to it. He opened the second folder. In 2017, 5 years after Hurricane Celeste, Gabriel had participated in a safety review involving delayed evacuations at private coastal facilities. While comparing older missions, he noticed that Eleanor's medical alert occurred after dispatch had already marked the Greyhaven request canceled. The sequence made no sense if Eleanor had truly left with a neighbor. Gabriel requested the materials available through the cooperative. The archive he received was still incomplete, but the timeline was enough to undermine his old conclusion. He wrote a corrected memorandum, stating that the family conflict sentence had not been supported by verified evidence and should not be used to evaluate my conduct. He sent the memorandum before contacting me. I received his email while reviewing an evacuation plan for a rehabilitation hospital in Richmond. I read his apology once, saved the corrected memorandum, and declined his request to meet. He did not keep calling. Nearly a year later, Rourke Response Systems became the technology contractor on a hospital evacuation project where I served as an independent safety consultant. Gabriel entered the first planning meeting, saw me at the opposite end of the table, and asked the project director whether I wanted him replaced. I told the director that changing personnel would delay the work. Then I told Gabriel his presence did not give him the right to discuss Celeste with me. He respected that boundary. For 6 months, we argued about generator placement, ambulance loading zones, patient tracking systems, and whether the hospital could rely on a single bridge during a flood. Gabriel never treated agreement as proof of loyalty. When I found a failure point in his company's system, he corrected it instead of explaining why I had misunderstood. Trust returned in pieces too small to feel dramatic. First, I trusted him to document a mistake. Then, I trusted him to tell a client I was right when the admission cost his company money. Later, I trusted him enough to sit across from him at dinner, without feeling that I was giving up some part of the case against him. He never asked when I planned to forgive him. By the time our relationship became personal, we had spent years seeing each other under pressure. He knew I became colder when frightened. I knew silence from him usually meant he was checking facts, not withdrawing affection. We married in June of 2024 at a courthouse in Virginia. Lena was not there. My parents were not told. Brooke received no announcement because we were barely speaking beyond holiday messages. I kept the name Mara Whitaker. Gabriel did not post photographs, issue a press release, or allow his communications staff to describe me as the woman who had finally captured one of the country's most private billionaires. We ate dinner afterward with 4 friends and returned to work the following Monday. The secrecy had protected something important. It had also concealed a weakness I did not like admitting. I did not tell my family because they would have treated you as evidence that I had finally become worth respecting, I said. Gabriel leaned back in the chair. That is a good reason not to invite them. It is the only reason. No. I looked at him. You also did not tell them because you knew the truth would change the balance of power, he said. You wanted one part of your life they could not touch. That is not wrong. I did not say it was. I said they were still influencing the decision. I turned toward the rain-streaked window. His company's valuation had become public after a private investment round the previous year. Rourke Response Systems was valued at approximately $6,300,000,000. Gabriel retained about 81% of the equity. Financial publications estimated his personal net worth near $5,100,000,000. Those numbers did not sit in a bank account waiting to be spent. Most of the value came from ownership in a privately held company. Still, the figure was large enough to change how strangers behaved around him and how my family would have described my life. Connie would not have seen a marriage. She would have seen access. Thomas would have calculated what Gabriel might invest in Greyhaven. Brooke might have wondered why I had kept such a useful relationship away from everyone else. I did not want them to turn you into my revenge, I said. Then do not let them. That becomes harder when you arrive by helicopter. The county drill ends 40 minutes before the reception. The bridge traffic is restricted because of the utility repair. The filed flight is the safest way to meet the schedule. I know. I can arrive by car later. No. I am not asking you to hide because they might misunderstand. Gabriel watched me carefully. What are you asking? That you come as my husband, not as Gabriel Rourke solving a problem. That was already the plan. I picked up the certified archive index. Allison had received it less than an hour earlier. The record custodian had verified the claim number, the mission code, the date the materials entered the archive, and the hashes created when the files were exported. The dispatch audio remained sealed until the custodians completed the release procedure. The Thomas Whitaker submission, however, included a cover sheet that could already be certified without exposing Lena's protected medical records. Thomas had sent the submission 6 weeks after the storm. The cover sheet identified him as co-owner of Greyhaven Retreat, an authorized representative for the property. Attached to it had been the evacuation roster, a declaration, and correspondence arguing that Greyhaven should not bear responsibility for the delayed rescue because Eleanor had left the property before the alert. Thomas declared that Eleanor had departed with Walter and June Bell. He also wrote that any later return to Greyhaven resulted from confusion within the rescue crew and a personal disagreement between me and my mother. The submission was not a note signed during the hurricane. It was not a frightened mistake made while rain hit the windows and roads disappeared beneath water. Thomas had repeated the lie 6 weeks later while insurance companies were determining who should pay for the aircraft damage, Lena's injury, and Eleanor's care. He had attached the false passenger roster as support. My father knew the Bells had already denied taking her, I said. If their interview was completed before this submission, he knew, Gabriel replied. The archive index gave us the date of the Bell statement. It had been taken 11 days before Thomas sent his declaration. I read both dates again. Thomas had not merely accepted Connie's story because silence was easier. He had received information contradicting it and still submitted the roster. His lie had a purpose. If Eleanor had already left Greyhaven, then the resort had fulfilled its duty. Liability shifted toward the rescue cooperative, the medical alert provider, or me. He used my report, Gabriel said. The cover sheet listed the documents Thomas relied on. Gabriel's original report was one of them. My mother had given Gabriel a story in a hospital corridor. Gabriel had placed part of that story into official language. Thomas had then used the official language to reinforce the same lie in an insurance dispute. A family accusation had become professional evidence because each person repeated what served him. Gabriel closed the folder. My affidavit needs to explain that chain. It must explain only what you know. I know Connie spoke to me. I know what she said. I know what I failed to verify. I know Thomas later cited my report. You do not know who made the cancelled call? Agreed. You cannot say the delay caused Lena's injury. I will use the consultant's language. It increased exposure to worsening conditions and was one contributing factor. You cannot present the affidavit through your company. It will come from my personal counsel and go only to the cooperative's record correction panel. I had expected to fight him over at least one point. The fact that I did not need to made me realize how much of our marriage had been built on these unremarkable moments. He did not prove his love by taking over. He proved it by accepting the boundary without making me defend it. Gabriel's attorney joined us by secure video. A mobile notary verified his identity, confirmed his physical location, and watched him sign the sworn affidavit. The document described the hospital conversation, the report sentence, the lack of verification, the corrected memorandum, and the materials he later discovered. Gabriel did not claim Connie had committed a crime. He did not state that my parents intentionally endangered Eleanor. He admitted that his own report had given unsupported credibility to their account. After the notary ended the session, I sent the affidavit to Allison for filing with the record correction panel. Gabriel checked the time. I need to leave for the drill. There is one more thing. He waited. If Connie attacks me at the reception, do not answer by announcing the investigation. What do you want me to do? Tell the truth if someone asks you a direct question. Do not display documents. Do not mention the archive audio. Do not make this look like a billionaire arrived with a verdict. I am not the verdict. I know, they may not. He put on his overcoat. I will follow your lead. Before leaving, he touched my cheek and kissed my forehead. The gesture was private, brief, and more reassuring than any promise to destroy the people who had hurt me. My phone rang as the hotel door closed behind him. Brooke's name appeared on the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I remembered the way she had gripped the chair at breakfast and failed to deny what she knew. I answered. For several seconds, I heard only her breathing. Mara, she said. I lied when I told the review I could not remember. I sat beside the folders on the desk. What do you remember? Her voice broke before she forced the words out. I saw Grandma in the upstairs window. Brooke's confession did not come all at once. She gave me the first sentence, then stopped as if the rest might still be pushed back into the place where she had kept it for 13 years. I saw Grandma in the upstairs window, she repeated. I moved the folders away from the edge of the hotel desk and put the call on speaker. Tell me exactly what you remember. Do not tell me what Mom later said happened. Brooke drew a shaky breath. Dad was driving. Mom was in the passenger seat. I was in the back with the bags. We had just reached the end of the service road when I looked behind us. What made you look? I heard something strike the glass. I thought a branch had hit the car, but the sound came from Greyhaven. Grandma was at the second-floor window. She had one hand against it. Could you see her clearly? Yes, she was wearing the blue cardigan she always kept near her oxygen chair. What did you say? I told Mom Grandma was still inside. The line went quiet. I heard fabric moving as Brooke shifted the phone. What did Mom say? She said the rescue team was already coming. She said the road could close at any minute, and if Dad turned around, all of us might become trapped. She told me Grandma had agreed to wait because the air crew could move her more safely. My mother had given Brooke a version of events that made continuing down the road sound responsible. At 19, frightened by the storm and dependent on our parents, Brooke had accepted it. That explained why she had stayed in the car. It did not explain the next 13 years. Why did you tell the original review that you could not remember? I asked. Mom said if I described the window, investigators would blame Dad for leaving. She said Greyhaven would lose its insurance and we would lose the house. You were 19. I understand why that frightened you. You do not sound like you understand. I understand the fear. That does not make the statement true. Brooke began crying quietly, but she kept speaking. You always make everything sound simple. The choice was not simple. The fact that Grandma was still upstairs was. I thought help was coming. And when did you learn it had been canceled? Her breathing changed. I waited. 5 years ago, she said. The answer removed the protection of youth. Brooke explained that she had been working in Greyhaven's marketing office while Connie prepared a presentation about the resort's post-storm rebuilding. Their shared administrative mailbox contained old correspondence that had been imported during a server migration. Brooke searched Eleanor's name for photographs and found an email from Thomas to Greyhaven's former insurer. The subject line included the words "Cancelled rescue request." What did the email say? I asked. Dad wrote that dispatch had canceled the first mission after receiving confirmation from Greyhaven that Grandma had already left. He said the later medical alert created confusion. Did he say who provided the confirmation? There was an attachment, but I did not open it. Do you still have the email? I do not know. The mailbox was archived when we changed providers. Did you forward it, print it, or save a screenshot? I forwarded it to my personal account because I wanted to ask Mom about it. I closed my eyes for a moment. Do you still have that message? I think so. Do not open the attachment. Do not forward it to me. Call Allison. Tell her exactly where it is and let her arrange preservation with your email provider. You already have an attorney involved in everything. There is a difference between preserving an original message and sending me a screenshot that can be challenged later. This is what I mean. I am telling you I helped them lie, and you are talking about email headers. The accusation was not entirely unfair. I know how to protect a record, I said. I do not always know what to do with the person handing it to me. Brooke stopped crying long enough to listen. I am angry with you, I continued. I also know this is costing you something. Both things can be true. When I confronted Mom, she said the cancellation was only temporary. She said they believed the Bells had taken Grandma, then realized later there had been confusion. The Bell van was already through the checkpoint before the cancellation call. I did not know that then. What did Mom ask you to do? She told me to delete the email. She said if the truth came out, people would say I abandoned Grandma too. She said Luke would look at me differently if he ever found out. Did you delete it from the Greyhaven mailbox? Yes. My sister had not merely remained silent. She had removed a business record after understanding that it contradicted our parents' public story. Is it still in your personal account? I asked. I never deleted that copy. Why keep it? Because part of me knew I might need proof that I was not imagining what I saw. The same family that taught Brooke to conceal evidence had also taught her never to trust her own memory without it. You need separate counsel before you give a formal statement, I said. Allison represents me. She cannot advise you about your own exposure. I cannot hire a lawyer 2 days before my wedding. You can at least speak to one before signing anything or deleting anything else. I am not the criminal here. I did not call you one. I am telling you not to make another frightened decision because Mom says it is the only way to save the family. Brooke's voice hardened. Can you wait until after the honeymoon? The grant deadline is Monday. Greyhaven can withdraw the document. Mom and Dad already represented that I agreed in principle. They tried to use wedding photographs as support. Waiting gives them time to submit another version. My wedding is tomorrow. I know. For once, could you choose a person instead of a process? The words struck the part of me Lena had already exposed. I had spent years surviving by converting pain into timelines, records, and decisions. Documents did not interrupt, deny, or ask me to soften the truth so they could remain comfortable. People did. There have been times when I chose procedure because it was easier than dealing with what someone felt, I said. I did that to Lena. I have done it to Gabriel. I may be doing part of it now. Brooke said nothing. But postponing a false filing is not choosing you, I continued. It is choosing the version of you that never has to admit what happened. I will not help preserve that version. You could destroy my marriage. I am not the person who kept this from Luke. She let out a broken laugh. You always know exactly where to place the blame. No. I spent 13 years carrying blame that belonged to several people. I am finally putting each part where it belongs. Brooke asked to meet in person. We chose a quiet conference room at my attorney's temporary office rather than Greyhaven or my hotel. She arrived wearing jeans, a heavy coat, and no makeup. Her wedding rehearsal manicure looked strangely formal against the paper cup she held. Allison joined us only long enough to explain that she represented me, not Brooke. She gave Brooke the names of 2 independent attorneys and left the room before Brooke discussed the email in detail. Brooke opened her personal account on her own laptop. She did not click the forwarded message. She showed me only the search result and date while Allison arranged for a neutral forensic collection. The subject line read, Follow-up, Canceled Rescue, Request, and Liability Allocation. The message had been forwarded from Greyhaven's administrative account 5 years earlier. The preview text contained my father's name, and the phrase resident previously removed. Brooke closed the laptop. I thought finding it would make me feel better, she said. It rarely works that way. There is another file. She explained that when Eleanor died 3 years earlier, Brooke became personal representative of the estate. Our grandmother had left little property beyond a savings account, personal belongings, and boxes of records she had insisted on keeping. Connie told me the estate had been simple and that there was nothing requiring my involvement. Brooke had stored the files in Greyhaven's locked records room. Grandma requested copies of her rehabilitation records after the storm, she said. She told me she wanted the account in her own words because everyone kept correcting her. Did you read them? Not then. I saw the facility name on the folder. Because Eleanor had requested and received those records during her lifetime, the patient copy belonged among her personal papers. That did not automatically make every page admissible or certified, but it gave us a lawful source and a path to verification. Brooke signed an authorization in her capacity as personal representative, directing the rehabilitation facility to provide a certified copy of the relevant intake note to independent counsel. Allison also requested confirmation that Eleanor had personally obtained the copy found in the estate folder. Brooke called Luke and asked him to bring the sealed estate box from Greyhaven. She did not explain the contents over the phone. He arrived 20 minutes later, placed the box on the conference table, and looked at both of us. "Is this about the wedding statement?" he asked. "It is about Grandma," Brooke said. Luke did not open the box. He handed it to Brooke and waited while she broke the estate seal she had placed there after probate closed. The rehabilitation folder sat beneath insurance letters and pharmacy receipts. Inside was a patient request form signed by Eleanor, a cover sheet from the facility, and copies of her intake assessment. The relevant note contained no dramatic accusation. A licensed social worker had written that Eleanor reported being left at the resort after relatives departed and being told that an air crew would retrieve her later. The note also recorded that she felt guilty because a crew member had been injured during the rescue. Eleanor had spent part of her recovery blaming herself for Lena's body. Brooke pressed both hands over her mouth. Luke read the note twice. "Your mother knew this existed?" "I do not know." "Did you?" "I knew there was a rehab folder. I never read it." He looked at her carefully. "I keep hearing that sentence." Brooke flinched. I understood his anger, but I did not use it. "The facility still needs to certify the record," I said. "This copy shows what to request. It is not the entire case." Luke turned toward me. "What else is missing?" I showed him the orange tag on my key ring. Until that day, I had treated the tag as a private object. The plastic was scratched, and one corner had been worn smooth by years of contact with my keys. A 6-digit registry code remained visible beneath Eleanor's name. Allison had obtained a certified record from the county's accessible evacuation registry that morning. The code matched the tag exactly. It showed that Eleanor had been enrolled as a resident, requiring assisted evacuation, and that Greyhaven had acknowledged the registration before the hurricane season began. The incident attestation claimed Eleanor had chosen to remain behind and had not been awaiting formal assistance. The registry record contradicted that claim. I placed the certified page beside the orange tag. For 13 years, I had carried the object as proof of my failure to protect my grandmother before the storm. It was evidence of something else. Eleanor had followed the process. She had registered. She had worn the tag. The system had known she needed help until someone from Greyhaven said she was already gone. Brooke touched the edge of the page, but not the tag. "I remember Mom taking it off Grandma's walker at the hospital," she said. "She did not," I replied. "I found it on the walker after the rescue." Brooke looked confused. "Then she lied about that too." "What did she say?" "She told me the tag was not on Grandma when you found her. She said Grandma must have removed it because she no longer wanted county assistance. That small lie had supported a larger one. If Eleanor had discarded the tag, she could be portrayed as the person who rejected the evacuation plan. But the tag had remained with her until I carried it away." Luke walked to the window. "How many versions of this story are there?" "One for every person Mom needed to control," I said. Brooke's phone began vibrating across the table. Connie's name appeared on the screen. Brooke declined the call. It rang again immediately. "You should answer," I said. "Do not discuss evidence. Do not agree to meet alone. Do not tell her where the estate folder is." Brooke picked up and stepped into the hallway. I could not hear Connie's words through the closed door. What I know about that conversation came from Brooke's later statement and the call log confirming its time. Connie had discovered that Luke removed the estate box from Greyhaven. She told Brooke that Mara was using the wedding to turn her against her parents. Then she repeated the fear she had used 5 years earlier. If Luke learned Brooke had seen Eleanor in the window, he would never believe she was capable of protecting a family of her own. Brooke returned with her face pale and her hands unsteady. "She knows," she said. Luke moved toward her. "Knows what?" "That I told Mara." Before Brooke could say more, Luke's phone rang. It was the wedding coordinator asking whether he had printed a revised schedule in the management office. He said he had not. When he returned to Greyhaven, the schedule was not the only paper waiting in the shared printer tray. Less than an hour later, he came back to the office, carrying 4 pages folded inside his coat. Connie's name appeared in the document properties at the top of the printout. The pages contained a draft of her wedding toast. Most of it praised Brooke, Luke, and Greyhaven. Near the end, the tone changed. Connie described one daughter who had stayed loyal and built a life around love, then contrasted her with another who had spent years rejecting family and blaming others for the consequences of her own choices. The final line was underlined. Some women build families, others spend their lives blaming one. On the morning of Brooke's wedding, I woke before sunrise and checked 3 things before getting out of bed. The first was the secure folder Allison had created for the case. Naomi's incident card, the Bell passenger list, Gabriel's affidavit, the certified evacuation registry, and the preserved Greyhaven emails were stored with counsel and backed up in an encrypted archive. None of the original evidence was in my hotel room, my rental car, or my handbag. The second was the weather. The winter front had moved offshore, leaving cold, steady wind and clear visibility along the coast. Gabriel's county evacuation drill was proceeding as scheduled. The helicopter crew had already filed the route from Dare County Regional Airport to Greyhaven's private heliport and confirmed the venue's landing authorization. The third was my phone. Brooke had sent a message at 2:14 in the morning. "I asked Mom to remove the part about you." Luke asked too. She said she would think about it. That was not reassurance. Connie never needed time to think when she planned to show mercy. She needed time when she was deciding how much damage she could cause without losing control of the room. I replied that I would keep my promise not to disrupt the ceremony. I did not ask Brooke to control our mother for me. Gabriel called while I was getting dressed. He wore a dark operations jacket, and behind him I could see the county emergency center filling with staff. Maps covered one wall. A line of monitors showed evacuation routes, bridge capacity, medical transport locations, and shelter occupancy. "The drill ends at 3:30, he said. "We transfer to the airport immediately afterward. Estimated arrival at Greyhaven is 6:40. The reception dinner starts at 6. I know. You will miss the first course. I have survived worse." His voice was light, but his eyes studied me. "How are you? I know where every document is. I have my own car, and my mother has drafted a speech about why no one could love me." That was not the question. "I am angry. Better. Better than what? Pretending you are only managing logistics." I adjusted the clasp of my pearl earrings. "I will not let her turn the ceremony into a fight. You can protect Brooke's ceremony without protecting Connie from every consequence." "I know. Do you?" The question was gentle enough to be irritating. "I will answer what happens," I said. "I will not create it." "That sounds like you." Before ending the call, Gabriel told me the signed affidavit had been formally accepted by the Atlantic Coastal Rescue Cooperative's Record Correction Panel. It had not been sent to the grant administrator, Greyhaven's lender, or any reporter. He had followed the boundary exactly. At 10, I drove to Greyhaven. The main building had been transformed overnight. White fabric framed the entrance. Winter greenery lined the staircase, and small glass lanterns flickered beneath the covered porch. The ocean beyond the dunes was deep blue under the clear sky. Wedding guests moved through the lobby carrying garment bags and gift boxes. Employees hurried between the kitchen and pavilion. Every detail suggested celebration, but the staff members spoke more quietly when Connie passed. I found the seating chart displayed near the reception entrance. My name appeared at table 14, beside a former vendor, 2 distant cousins, and 3 guests from Luke's side whom I had never met. The family tables were positioned near the dance floor. Table 14 stood beside the service doors at the rear. My place card listed my occupation as independent consultant. Brooks listed her as Director of Brand Development, Greyhaven Retreat. Luke's included his law firm. Thomas was identified as co-founder of Greyhaven. Connie's card carried the title Managing Member and Community Resilience Advocate. Mine could have said Evacuation and Safety Planning Specialist. That was the description I had provided on the wedding information form. Instead, Connie had chosen language broad enough to sound temporary. Luke approached while I was still looking at the chart. "I did not approve this," he said. "It is a table, not a life sentence. You should be with the family. I am exactly where Connie wants the unmarried version of me to be." His mouth tightened. "Brooke told me your husband is coming. She knew I was married before yesterday. She did not know who he was. That should not affect my chair. It does not affect mine." I looked at him then. Luke seemed exhausted. He had spent the night before his wedding learning that his bride had helped conceal a family lie and that his in-laws wanted to use their wedding as evidence in a business filing. "You do not need to rearrange the room for me," I said. "I am not trying to fix your family." "Good. Do not punish Brooke during the ceremony either." His expression sharpened. "You think I would? I think you are angry enough to confuse honesty with timing. I have done it." He looked toward the staircase, where Brooke's bridesmaids were carrying dress boxes upstairs. "I do not know what happens after today. You do not have to decide today. What would you do?" I would stop asking what explanation makes the past easier to accept. Then I would watch what she chooses when telling the truth costs her something. Luke nodded once. He did not thank me. Advice that matters rarely feels comforting when it is given. A staff member found me 20 minutes later and said Thomas wanted to speak privately in the library. "I will meet him in the lobby," I said. "He specifically requested the library. Then he can specifically walk out of it." Thomas appeared near the elevators before the employee could leave. He wore his wedding suit but no tie, and a leather folder rested beneath his arm. "Mara, we need 5 minutes. We have already had the conversation. The document has been revised. I have already refused it." He glanced at the guests moving through the lobby. "Not here. Here is appropriate." Thomas lowered his voice. "Your mother has agreed to remove the personal section from her toast. I did not know honesty required payment. This is not payment. It is a compromise." He opened the folder just enough for me to see the incident attestation and a black fountain pen clipped inside. My father had brought the same model of pen from the conference room box. He believed repetition would make the object feel inevitable. "Sign the revised version before the ceremony," he said. "Connie welcomes Gabriel respectfully. Says nothing about your personal life. And we all get through the evening." I took out my phone and opened the voice memo application. Thomas stared at the screen. "What are you doing?" "I am recording the time and terms of this conversation. You may leave if you do not consent." His face darkened, but he stayed. I stated the date, the location, and his name. Then I said, "Thomas Whitaker has offered to remove defamatory personal remarks from Connie Whitaker's wedding toast if I sign the incident attestation." "That is not what I said." "Correct it." "I said the family is willing to avoid unnecessary conflict if you cooperate with a reasonable business request. Does Connie intend to make personal remarks about me if I do not sign?" He looked past me toward the front entrance. "Thomas, she wrote the toast while angry. Has she agreed to remove the remarks without my signature?" "She will if you stop forcing this confrontation." I repeated the question. His silence answered it more clearly than another explanation would have. I recorded that I had previously refused the attestation in writing, that my attendance did not constitute consent, and that I would not sign. Then I stopped the memo and emailed the file directly to Allison. Thomas's composure cracked. "You are turning every family conversation into evidence. You brought a contract to your daughter's wedding. Do you understand how humiliating this is for your mother? She can avoid humiliation by not standing before a room and attacking me. You think that because you have Gabriel now, none of this can touch you. I had a life before you knew his name. You are alone. I was private." He pushed the folder toward me one last time. "There are 43 employees whose jobs could be affected by what you are doing. And you are still risking those jobs by asking me to sign something false." The ceremony coordinator called for the immediate family to gather. Thomas closed the folder so sharply that the pen struck the leather. "You always need to win," he said. "No, I need my name removed from your lie. I walked away before he could answer. Brooke was waiting in a preparation room overlooking the sound. Her dress was simple and elegant, with long sleeves and a narrow line of pearls at the neckline. For a few seconds, she looked like the little sister who used to sit on my bedroom floor and ask me to braid her hair before school. Then I saw Connie's reflection in the mirror behind her. My mother adjusted Brooke's veil without acknowledging me. "You are late," she said. "I was speaking with Dad." Connie's hand stopped briefly. "About what?" "He can tell you." Brooke met my eyes in the mirror. "Did he bring the document?" "Yes. I told them not to." "You told them you wanted them not to. That is different from deciding what you will do if they ignore you." Connie stepped away from the veil. "This is not the time to interrogate the bride." "I am not interrogating her. You have spent 2 days making everything about an old grievance." Brooke turned in her chair. "Mom, please leave it alone." Connie stared at her. It was a small sentence, but I knew what it cost Brooke to say it. The coordinator entered before Connie responded and announced that the ceremony would begin in 10 minutes. Bridesmaids gathered their bouquets. Someone adjusted the train of Brooke's dress. The room filled with perfume, hairspray, and nervous laughter. Connie moved close to my sister and kissed her cheek. "Do not let anyone ruin this for you," she whispered. She did not lower her voice enough to keep me from hearing. The ceremony took place inside the glass pavilion, while winter sunlight faded over the dunes. The heaters cast a soft warmth beneath the vaulted ceiling. White branches, ivory roses, and small candles surrounded the aisle. I sat at the end of the second row, close enough to see Luke's hands tremble when Brooke appeared. For that hour, I let myself feel only what belonged to the moment. Brooke had lied. She had remained silent after learning more. She had helped bring me home under incomplete pretenses. None of that erased the years when she followed me through the house, borrowed my clothes without asking, or called me from college because she was afraid she had chosen the wrong major. Love did not require me to deny what she had done. Anger did not require me to deny that I still loved her. When Brooke reached Luke, her eyes filled. Luke took her hands and looked directly at her while they spoke their vows. He did not withdraw from the promise because of what he had learned. He also did not pretend the promise solved it. I cried when she said his name. The photographer captured it. After the ceremony, she arranged the family near the windows. Connie positioned herself between Thomas and Brooke, then called me closer. "Mara, stand beside your sister," she said brightly. I understood why she wanted the photograph. The email chain had made that clear. I stood beside Brooke anyway. My smile was real. That did not make Connie's narrative true. It meant she did not own every emotion visible on my face. The photographer took several frames. In one, Brooke reached for my hand. I let her hold it until the camera lowered. "Thank you," she said. "For the picture? For coming." I believed her. That was what made the rest harder. The reception began at 6. My table remained at the rear, but Luke quietly moved my place card to the family table. Connie noticed immediately. She said nothing while guests were watching. At 6:23, Allison sent me a secure message. The insurer's archive custodian had located the dispatch audio export under the mission code. The file's original archive hash matched the value created when it entered legal hold 13 years earlier. A records custodian was comparing the export log with the cooperative's system records and preparing a certification. The audio existed. We still did not know exactly what it contained. No one on my side had opened it. Authentication came before interpretation. I read the message once, then locked my phone. A second message arrived from Gabriel. "Drill complete. Departing for airport. Flight remains on schedule." I placed the phone beside my champagne glass. Across the room, Thomas leaned toward Connie and said something I could not hear. His eyes moved briefly toward me. Connie's expression did not change. She knew preservation notices had been sent. She knew Naomi had surfaced. She knew I had found the wedding email chain and refused the attestation. She did not know the archive custodian had located the audio. What she knew was enough to frighten her. What she did not know allowed her to believe she could still control the story. Dinner plates were cleared. The band lowered the music. Luke's best man gave a short toast, followed by Brooke's college roommate. Both speeches were warm and mercifully ordinary. Then Connie rose. Brooke reached for her wrist. I could not hear what my sister said. Later, both Brooke and Luke confirmed that she asked our mother to use the shorter version of the toast and leave me out of it. Connie removed Brooke's hand gently, smiling as if reassuring a nervous bride. Thomas stared down at his place setting. The microphone passed into my mother's hand. She began with Luke. She praised his patience, education, and loyalty. She called Brooke the daughter who had remained close to home and helped rebuild Greyhaven into a place worthy of the next generation. Guests smiled, glasses lifted. Then Connie looked directly at me. Her voice remained warm enough to disguise the blade. Brooke found a wonderful man who adores her, she said. Some women know how to build a life people want to join. Others spend years blaming everyone else because no man wants them. The laughter, after Connie's insult, lasted only a few seconds, but it changed the temperature of the room. A fork struck a plate near the back tables. The pavilion heaters hummed above us, and beyond the glass walls the January wind moved through the dune grass in long silver waves. Brooke stared at our mother. Luke's hand closed around the stem of his glass. Thomas looked down as though refusing to witness the moment might excuse him from it. My phone lit beside my plate. 6 minutes out. I did not need Gabriel to rescue me from a cruel speech. I had survived far worse than my mother's opinion of whether a man could love me. But Connie had chosen the exact moment when the life she had never bothered to learn was approaching Greyhaven's lawn. I set down my champagne. You keep asking about my husband, I said. Funny thing, you've already met him. Connie gave me a patient smile meant for the guests rather than me. Of course I have. And where is this husband, Mara? A few people shifted in their chairs. Did he get lost on the way to the wedding? She asked. The first vibration came through the glass beneath the music. Several guests looked toward the ceiling before the sound deepened into the unmistakable rhythm of rotor blades. Venue staff moved immediately. The doors leading to the lawn were closed, and 2 attendants in reflective jackets checked the fenced perimeter around Greyhaven's licensed heliport. Guests remained inside while the aircraft approached from the northwest. The helicopter had not appeared because I made a dramatic call from the table. Gabriel's route had been filed before noon. The county drill ended later than planned, and utility repairs had reduced vehicle access across the bridge. Flying from the regional airport was the safest way for him to arrive near the agreed time. Connie did not know any of that. She lowered the microphone as the helicopter descended into the landing lights. Rotor wash flattened the grass and rattled the bare branches beyond the fence. Inside the pavilion, the candles flickered behind their glass covers. When the aircraft settled, the crew completed its shutdown procedures before anyone approached. A ground attendant opened the passenger door and escorted Gabriel along the marked path. Whispers spread through the reception before he reached the building. Some guests recognized him from business publications. Others recognized the name of Rourke Response Systems when it moved from table to table. Connie recognized something else. Her fingers tightened around the microphone when Gabriel entered. She had seen him 13 years earlier under fluorescent hospital lights, before his company existed and before financial magazines estimated his personal stake at more than $5 billion. Gabriel removed his gloves as he crossed the pavilion. He did not come directly to me. He first stopped beside Brooke and Luke. I apologize for arriving during the speeches, he said. Congratulations to both of you. Luke stood and shook his hand. Brooke managed a quiet thank you, though her eyes moved repeatedly between Gabriel and our mother. Only then did he come to my chair. He rested one hand lightly against the back of it. I am sorry I missed dinner, wife. The room reacted more loudly to that single word than it had to the helicopter. I stood, and he kissed my cheek. It was not a theatrical kiss or a claim made for the audience. It was the same greeting he gave me when one of us returned late from work. Connie found her voice first. So, this was your plan, she said. You hid a wealthy husband and waited until Brooke's wedding to humiliate us. My marriage is not a family asset you were entitled to inventory, I replied. You let everyone believe you were alone. I allowed you to believe whatever required the least effort from you. Thomas rose from his chair. This is not appropriate. Your wife is holding the microphone, Luke said. Gabriel looked toward Connie. I felt the room waiting for him to threaten her, mention his attorneys, or announce that Greyhaven's grant had already been destroyed. He did none of those things. "The last time Mrs. Whitaker and I met," he said, "she gave me an account of a rescue mission. I repeated part of that account in an official report without verifying it properly." Connie's mouth tightened. "I told you what I knew. You told me Mara had used a family dispute to justify the mission." "She did." Gabriel's expression remained controlled. "The medical alert was valid. The mission was authorized. My comment about Mara's judgment was unsupported, and I corrected it in a sworn statement." He did not mention the archive, the insurer, the grant administrator, or the audio we had not yet heard. He spoke only about his own conduct and the facts he could personally establish. Connie turned toward the guests. "Do you see what she has done? She brought him here to revive a tragedy at her sister's wedding." "He was invited as my husband," I said. "You chose the subject." Thomas stepped closer to Connie. "This needs to end." I looked at my mother and asked the one question I had carried for 13 years. "Why did you cancel the rescue?" The room became silent enough that I could hear the air system clicking above us. Connie's face did not collapse. She had spent too many years defending the story to surrender because I finally asked the question publicly. "I did not cancel anything," she said. Thomas responded before I could. "We were told Eleanor was safe." I turned toward him. "Who told you?" He stared at me. "The Bells had already passed the checkpoint," I continued. "Who told you she was safe?" "That is not a conversation for this room. You just answered for Mom in this room." Thomas looked toward Connie, but she did not help him. Luke walked to the center of the pavilion and held out his hand for the microphone. "This is my wedding reception," he said. "No one else is using it to threaten, shame, or pressure anyone. The speeches are finished." Connie did not release the microphone immediately. Brooke stood beside her. "Mom," she said. That was all it took. Connie handed it to Luke. The band began again after a brief consultation with the coordinator. Servers returned to the tables. Conversations restarted slowly, each one pretending not to be about us. Gabriel sat beside me after Luke moved an extra chair to the family table. "You kept your promise," I said. I answered only what I knew. "You also missed the cake." I was told marriage required sacrifice. I laughed to spite myself, and the tension in my shoulders eased for the first time that evening. Across the room, Thomas took Brooke by the elbow and guided her toward the corridor near the kitchens. I saw his mouth moving, but I could not hear the conversation. Brooke returned several minutes later without approaching me. I did not decide what she was thinking. I did not assume she had chosen our parents again, simply because she remained beside them during the final dances. Later, Brooke and Luke separately told me what Thomas had said. He warned her that if she testified about seeing Eleanor in the window, every reviewer would ask why she had lied at 19 and why she had deleted the email as an adult. He said Luke would learn that his wife had protected herself while their grandmother waited upstairs. Thomas had presented truth as the thing that would expose Brooke, rather than the only action that might allow her to become someone different. She did not answer him that night. The reception ended without another speech. Gabriel and I returned to my hotel instead of staying at Greyhaven. Brooke left with Luke. Connie posed for photographs until the last guests departed. For the next 2 days, no one from my family contacted me. On Monday afternoon, Allison called while I was at her temporary office. "The grant administrator received an attestation bearing your signature," she said. I looked at the empty space on the table between us. "When?" "Uploaded yesterday evening." I did not sign anything. "They know. Your preservation notice required independent verification before they relied on any document using your identity. The administrator had not merely emailed Greyhaven to ask whether the signature was genuine. Its compliance officer contacted Allison through the number listed in the preservation notice. At the same time, the portal operator locked the submission, preserved the audit logs, and restricted further changes to the file. By the time Connie and Thomas learned that verification had begun, the technical record was already outside their control. Allison opened the secured copy, while a compliance officer remained on video. The document used the revised language Thomas had brought to the wedding. It claimed that Eleanor's status had been misunderstood during an emergency, that no person at Greyhaven intentionally supplied false information, and that I supported using the rescue as evidence of the resort's institutional improvement. My name appeared beneath it. The signature was mine, but I had not written it there. It was an image copied from an old professional report. Every angle, gap, and ink variation matched the earlier signature exactly. That alone was a strong indicator of duplication, but it was not the only evidence. The portal audit showed that the file had been uploaded through Connie's unique administrator account. Her login required multi-factor authentication, and the approval request had been confirmed through the registered device assigned to her. Thomas's separate account had then attested that he personally witnessed me sign the document at Greyhaven on Saturday night. The stated signing time was 8:42. At 8:42, I had been at my hotel. My parking receipt showed my Woodzacker entered the hotel lot shortly after 8. My room key opened the elevator vestibule and my floor minutes later. The lobby camera recorded me speaking with the front desk manager before going upstairs. Gabriel was still traveling from the county center to the airport at that time. Allison had been in Manteo. No one connected to me had access to Greyhaven's portal. The metadata supported the audit trail. The signature image had been inserted after my written refusal and after Thomas failed to obtain my signature at the wedding. But metadata was not carrying the case alone. We had the locked portal logs, multi-factor confirmation, witness attestation, original source signature, and independent proof that I was not present. Allison closed the file. They did not just repeat the old lie, she said. They created a new record and submitted it to obtain a current financial benefit. I thought about the fountain pen Thomas had pushed toward me, the photographs Connie had arranged, and her confidence that seeing me smile beside Brooke would make strangers believe our family had reconciled. They had tried pressure first. When pressure failed, they replaced my consent with an image. What happens now? I asked. The grant administrator will begin its own compliance review. The insurer and lender may need notice because the submission affects representations connected to Greyhaven. The record correction process remains separate. I want the employees protected where possible. That can be addressed later. First, we preserve every system involved. Allison confirmed that the portal operator had already locked the audit logs and stored a forensic copy of the submission. Preservation notices were being sent to Greyhaven's email provider, device management service, and document consultant. Only after that did we discuss contacting my parents. I did not want to warn them before the evidence was secured. I also did not want to spend the rest of my life wondering whether I had given them one clear opportunity to stop. Give them 24 hours, I said. Allison waited for the terms. They withdraw the submission, report the false signature themselves, preserve every device and account, and temporarily surrender operational access while the review is pending. And if they refuse? We send the complete verification record to every proper reviewer. No threats, no bargaining, and no private family settlement. Allison nodded. I looked once more at the copied signature beneath my name. Send them the choice, I said. The evidence stays locked either way. Allison sent the notice to Connie and Thomas at 9 the next morning. They had 24 hours to withdraw the attestation, report the false signature to the grant administrator, preserve every device and account involved, and surrender temporary access to Greyhaven's financial and compliance systems. The portal operator already held the audit logs, so deleting a laptop or phone would not erase what had happened. The deadline was not an invitation to negotiate the evidence. It was their final opportunity to stop adding lies to it. Connie called me 11 minutes after receiving the notice. You have made your point, she said. I did not create the document. You know what I mean. You wanted us frightened, and now we are frightened. I wanted you to withdraw a false filing. She was calling from Greyhaven's management office. I could hear phones ringing and employees speaking in the outer room. Connie had used those people as shields every time I challenged her. She wanted me to picture 43 innocent workers standing behind her while she made her next offer. You could help stabilize this, she said. Your father and I are prepared to transfer part of our membership interest in Greyhaven to you. I almost admired how quickly she converted exposure into a transaction. In exchange for what? You speak to the grant administrator. You explain that the signature was added after a verbal understanding and that the document reflected what you intended to approve. That would be another false statement. You would have a meaningful share of the family business. You could oversee safety personally. Gabriel could help modernize the property. Gabriel is not investing in Greyhaven. This is not about his money. It became about his money before he finished crossing the reception floor. Connie's voice lowered. Everything I did was to keep this place alive. You left Grandma upstairs to protect it. Then you used my name to protect it again. I made one impossible decision during a hurricane. You made hundreds of decisions after the storm. She was silent long enough for me to hear a printer start in the background. You have always wanted control, she said. Now I am offering it to you. You still think everyone has a price because that is how you explain your own choices. I ended the call without changing the deadline. Thomas contacted Allison privately that afternoon. He said he had wanted to withdraw the submission as soon as verification began, but Connie refused. I did not treat that as fact merely because he said it. Thomas had spent 13 years presenting cowardice as reluctant cooperation. Allison told him the same thing she had told Connie. He could preserve records, report his own conduct, and obtain independent counsel. No agreement would protect him from the consequences of falsely claiming he witnessed my signature. 3 hours before the deadline, Thomas sent an email chain to the portal operator, the grant compliance officer, and Allison. The messages showed Connie directing the wedding photograph strategy, asking how to make my attendance appear to support reconciliation, and instructing the consultant to keep my name in the application. Connie responded by sending a memorandum through her attorney. It claimed Thomas had controlled the attestation process, maintained the evacuation roster, and assured her that I had consented. They had protected each other while their stories matched. Once the same lie threatened both of them, they began supplying evidence against each other. I forwarded every communication to the proper record custodians. I did not promise Thomas that cooperation would save him. I did not offer Connie silence in exchange for a confession. The audit logs, device records, emails, and witness statements would determine which claims were true. The deadline passed without a withdrawal or self-report. Brooke called the following morning. I am giving them my phone, she said. Give it to your attorney or the forensic examiner, not to me. I know. Her independent counsel arranged a forensic copy of the messages between her and Connie. Brooke kept the original phone under written preservation instructions. The extraction included the message in which Connie said photographs of us smiling would make the statement difficult to challenge. It also included a message sent after Brooke asked her to remove the insult from the wedding toast. If Mara signs, there will be nothing to say. If she refuses, people deserve to understand why she is doing this. My mother had not lost control during the speech. She had used humiliation as the punishment attached to my refusal. Brooke gave a formal statement about seeing Eleanor at the upstairs window. She admitted lying to the original review at 19 and deleting the Greyhaven email as an adult. She produced the copy preserved in her personal account and did not ask anyone to describe her decisions more kindly than they deserved. Luke moved into a short-term rental. He did not file for divorce at the reception or make a decision about their marriage in front of our family. He told Brooke that he needed to see whether she would continue telling the truth after the immediate fear passed. She accepted that without asking me to persuade him. 7 weeks after the wedding, the Atlantic Coastal Rescue Cooperative convened its record correction panel. The panel had one limited purpose. It could determine whether the mission record and professional findings were accurate. It could not prosecute Connie, decide ownership of Greyhaven, or award damages. I sat beside Allison in a plain conference room. Lena attended with her own counsel. Gabriel sat several seats away because his affidavit was evidence, not authority. The panel began with Eleanor's accessible evacuation registration. The certified county record matched the number on the orange tag I had carried for 13 years. It established that Eleanor required assisted evacuation and that Greyhaven had acknowledged that need before the hurricane. Naomi's incident card showed the initial request and the later cancellation. The cooperative's telephone records confirmed both calls came from Greyhaven's registered landline. Eleanor's medical alert proved she remained inside after the caller said she had already been removed. The Bell passenger list and checkpoint record disproved Thomas's declaration that Eleanor left in their van. June Bell's certified statement confirmed that Thomas told them another arrangement had been made. Elaine Porter presented the weather analysis. She did not promise that an earlier flight would have prevented Lena's injury. She explained that the false cancellation delayed the mission and reduced the crew's weather margin, increasing our exposure to the stronger band. The hard landing still had multiple contributing factors. The rehabilitation facility certified Eleanor's intake note. She had reported that Connie told her the family vehicle was full and the aircrew would come later. Gabriel's affidavit came next. He stated that Connie had described me as using the rescue to settle a family conflict, and that he had repeated an unsupported interpretation in his report. He accepted responsibility for failing to verify her account before attaching professional weight to it. Then the record's custodian authenticated the dispatch audio. Connie's voice filled the room. She said Eleanor had already been removed by a neighbor. Naomi asked for the neighbor's name. Connie refused to provide it and insisted that no responders come to Greyhaven and create a scene. The recording was not dramatic. Connie did not shout or confess that she wanted Eleanor harmed. Her voice sounded practical, impatient, and certain that protecting the property justified ending the call. That ordinary tone made it worse. The panel corrected the mission record. It found that Eleanor was a verified endangered resident, that my decision to launch had a legitimate operational basis, and that false information from Greyhaven caused an unnecessary delay. It removed the unsupported statement concerning my judgment. It documented the weather, equipment movement, and other factors involved in Lena's injury, without turning any one of them into a convenient single cause. The chair asked whether I wanted to make a final statement. Correcting my record matters, I said, but it also needs to state that the rescue team did not abandon Eleanor. We came when the system finally told us she was still there. The amended finding included that distinction. Later that week, a separate compliance conference addressed the forged attestation. The grant administrator and insurer reviewed my written refusal, the verification request, portal logs, multi-factor confirmation, Thomas's witness statement, my hotel records, and Brooks' messages. The grant application was suspended and referred for investigation. The insurer issued notice that it would not renew Greyhaven's policy after the contractual cure period because of material misrepresentation and governance risk. It did not close the resort that afternoon. It gave the LLC and its lender time to establish acceptable management and coverage. That notice activated the insurance covenant in Greyhaven's commercial loan. The lender could have declared default and begun foreclosure proceedings. Instead, it offered a forbearance agreement designed to preserve the operating business. Connie and Thomas accepted because the alternative placed the entire property at risk. They surrendered management access. An independent turnaround manager took control of finances, compliance, insurance negotiations, and daily operations. Greyhaven's revenue entered a monitored account that prioritized debt service, safety upgrades, and costs arising from the reviews. Employees who had not participated in the false filings kept their jobs. Bookings continued under outside supervision. I received no ownership interest. Gabriel provided no loan, investment, or guarantee. When Connie learned I had refused every path to acquiring Greyhaven, she asked Allison what I wanted from her. My answer remained the same: an accurate record. The County Emergency Preparedness Council removed Connie at a separate public meeting after reviewing the corrected mission findings and her conduct in the current grant submission. The plaque bearing her name disappeared from Greyhaven's entrance before spring. Thomas continued cooperating with investigators in the hope of reducing his responsibility. Connie moved out of their shared residence and blamed him publicly for the attestation. No divorce had been finalized when I began telling this story. The law enforcement investigation into the current false filing also remained open. Consequences did not arrive in one satisfying afternoon. They came through letters, meetings, account restrictions, corrected records, and doors that no longer opened when Connie used her access card. Lena agreed to help design the Eleanor Protocol, a program for coastal facilities serving guests with mobility and oxygen needs. She made it clear that working together did not restore the trust we once had. "I can believe the record now," she told me. "Believing you again will take longer." "I know." Brooke asked to meet me in June, 5 months after the wedding. We sat outside a quiet cafe while summer traffic moved toward the islands. "Do you think we can ever be sisters again?" she asked. "Not the way we were." Her eyes lowered. "The old version required me to carry everyone's secrets," I continued. "It required you to love me privately and choose them publicly. I will not return to that." "Is there another version?" "There might be if you keep telling the truth when it costs you." She nodded. I did not promise forgiveness on a schedule, but I stayed until we finished our coffee. By then, I had completed a new medical clearance, recurrent ground school, simulator sessions, and a formal flight review. I also completed the required recent takeoffs and landings with a certified helicopter flight instructor. My final training flight took place on a clear July morning. The instructor occupied the right seat. Gabriel watched from behind the hangar's marked safety line, his hands in his pockets, and no authority over the aircraft. I completed the pre-flight inspection myself. I checked the controls, fuel, instruments, emergency equipment, and rotor area. When the instructor gave the command, I raised the helicopter into a controlled hover. For years, I had believed clearing my name would return something the storm had taken from me. It did not restore Lena's career, Eleanor's lost hours, or the younger version of me who expected evidence to matter simply because it was true. What it restored was choice. I eased the aircraft forward, increased power, and watched the runway fall away beneath us. Gabriel became smaller beside the hangar. The coastline opened ahead, bright beneath the morning sun. This time, when the ground fell away beneath me, it was because I had chosen to rise. You may love your family, but love does not require you to sign false documents, hide wrongdoing, or carry blame that belongs to someone else. When people pressure you to keep the peace, ask whose peace your silence is protecting. Real reconciliation begins with honesty, responsibility, and changed behavior, not public smiles, family photographs, or promises made only after consequences appear. You should preserve important messages, read every document before signing, seek qualified legal advice when necessary, and keep your finances, transportation, and housing independent when dealing with controlling relatives. Evidence is most powerful when it is collected lawfully, stored safely, and presented through the proper process. You also need to remember that revenge should not destroy innocent employees, children, or bystanders. Let the truth create fair consequences for the people who made the harmful choices. You do not have to forgive quickly, and you do not have to rebuild a relationship simply because someone finally admits what they did. Watch what they do after the apology, especially when honesty costs them something. Protecting your name is not selfish, setting boundaries is not cruelty, and accepting help does not make you weak. If this story reminded you to choose truth over guilt and self-respect over manipulation, subscribe to the channel for more powerful family stories and lessons.